right, y'all, we are back. Let me get my graphic here for where we stopped on. In 1 second, we were actually on chapter 3, I believe. So, yep, we're on chapter 3. So, this is the second half of this study, this powerful study that we've been learning. I'm just going to go ahead and continue in chapter 3. All right, so just to recap also, chapter 4, chapter 4, I was summarizing chapter 4, so we can actually move on to chapter 5. So with chapter 4, you basically have the introduction of Antiochus Epiphanes, and he's this terrible king. He's actually prophesied about in the book of Daniel. He's prophesied about I believe in the Apocalypse of Elijah as well. There's things that he's done that's recorded in biblical history. In First Maccabees, you'll find out about him as well. And yeah, she's knocked out. So yeah, you'll find out about things that he's done ultimately, right? So in this specific chapter 4, he's coming on the scene. And in the latter half of the end of the chapter 4, he's basically trying to sway the Hebrews. He's setting up a portion of getting ready to basically torture the Hebrews to get them to stop doing, ultimately following the word, following the instructions that they religiously live by. So when you go read First Maccabees, you do see that he does change the laws, right? He does change, and to the point where even there's reverse circumcision that happens from those Hebrews that, or they technically aren't Hebrews anymore when that happened, but they essentially did a reverse circumcision to take away anything that they did basically unto the Most High, right? So, and that's actually a thing when you look that up. 1 second. So, definitely read this chapter in its entirety. And then if you can, read First Maccabees chapter 1. I think it's like 1 through 3, if I'm not mistaken. Excuse me, y'all. So, he's compelling by these different means. So now we're just going to go ahead and go to chapter 5. So I don't have any chapter notes, I think, all the way up until, let's see here, I think chapter 13, to be honest. Okay, Mama. There you go. She is knocked out. Yeah, so I don't have any chapter notes, y'all, until chapter 13. Okay. So, and that's literally because we have to read throughout the chapters, and everything is just going to flow from there on, because it's more like a story and it's more understanding with it. Okay. There you go. All right, so chapter 5, y'all. The tyrant Antiochus, therefore, sitting in public state with his assessors upon a certain lofty place, with his armed troops standing in a circle around him, commanded his spear bearers to seize every one of the Hebrews, and to compel them to taste swine's flesh and things offered to idols. And should any of them be unwilling to eat the accursed food, they were to be tortured on the wheel and so killed. And when many had been seized, the foremost man of the assembly, a Hebrew, by name Eleazar, a priest by family, by profession, a lawyer, and advanced in years, for this reason known to many of the king's followers, was brought near to him. So they knew who this man was, devoted in who he was. And Antiochus, verse 5, seeing them, said, I would counsel you, old man, before your tortures begin, to taste this swine's flesh and to save your life. For I feel respect for your age and hoary head, and since you have had so long, you appear to be to me no philosopher in retaining the superstition of Jews. So that reason, since nature has conferred upon you the most excellent flesh of this animal, do you loathe it? It seems senseless not to enjoy what is pleasant, yet not disgraceful, and from notions of sinfulness to reject the boons of nature. You will be acting, I think, still more senselessly if you follow vain conceits about the truth. So this is Antiochus's appeal to Eleazar. Verse 10, and you will moreover be despising me to your own punishment. Will you not awake from your trifling philosophy? The first time I seen the word trifling in the scriptures. And give up the folly of your notions and regaining understanding. Regaining understanding worthy of your age, search into the truth of an expedient course, and reverencing my kindly admonition, have pity upon your own years. For bear in mind that if there be any power which watches over you, over this religion of yours, it will pardon you from all your transgressions of the law which you commit through compulsion. So now he's trying to flip. That's how the enemy will flip the scriptures. He's trying to flip the scriptures and say, like, yeah, if you eat a little bit, you'll still be fine because you'll have forgiveness. So he knows some of the scriptures, right? While the tyrant incited him on this manner to the unlawful eating of flesh, Eleazar begged permission to speak. And having received power to speak, he began deliver himself like this. We, O Antiochus, who are persuaded that we live under a divine law, consider no compulsion to be so forcible as obedience to that law. So we don't feel like we are being forced to obey the instructions of the Most High. For this reason, we consider that we ought not in any point to transgress the instructions. And indeed, where our law, as you suppose, where our law truly not divine, and if we wrongly think it divine, we should have no right even in that case to destroy our sense of religion. Think not eating the unclean then a trifling offense. For transgression of the law, whether in small or great matters, is of equal moment. For in either case, the law is equally slighted. Small or great matters is of equal moment. For in either case, the Torah is equally slighted, y'all. You can find some scriptures on that too. But you deride, and so this is, just remember, when you're listening to this, right, and you guys are reading it, sorry, my screen is shaking, you guys are reading it, just understand that this is how he's reasoning, right, with wisdom. He's reasoning and understanding everything that he understands about this Torah. He's already ready to speak because that reasoning is already in him, that wisdom is already in him. Verse 22, but you deride our philosophy as though we lived irrationally in it. Yet it instructs us in temperance, so that we are superior to all pleasures and lust, and it exercises us in manliness, so that we cheerfully undergo every grievance. The Torah instructs us in temperance and self-control, so that we are superior to all pleasures and lusts, and it exercises us in manliness. So you can also say in power, so that we cheerfully undergo every grievance. and it instructs us in justice, in righteousness, so that in all our dealings we render what is due. And it teaches us piety, so that we worship the only true, the Most High, becomingly. Verse 25, for that reason it is that we eat not the unclean. So you see how he has a reason for why he's following the food laws, right? He has a whole reason behind it, within wisdom that's established in his heart, in his mind. For believing that the Torah was established by the Most High, we are convinced that the Creator of the world is giving his instruction, sympathizes with our nature. Those things which are convenient to our souls, he has directed us to eat, but those which are repugnant to them, things that shouldn't be convenient to our souls, he has interdirected. He has changed the course of action. He has changed the freedom to choose of whether you want to choose good or evil. He's given instructions that choose righteousness. Verse 27, but tyrant-like, you not only force us to break those instructions, but also to eat, that you may ridicule us, as we so profanely eat. But you will not have this cause of laughter against me, nor will I transgress the sacred oaths of my fathers to keep the Torah. No, not if you pluck out my eyes and consume my entrails. I am not so old and void of power, manliness, that my rational powers are youthful in defense of my religion, of my walk. Now then, prepare your wills and kindle a fiercer flame. I will not so compassionate my old age as on my account to break this Torah of my country. I will not belie you, O Torah, my instructor, or forsake you, O beloved self-control. I will not put you to shame, O philosopher reason, or deny you, O honored priesthood and science of the law. Mouth, you will not pollute my old age, nor the full stature of a perfect life. Of a perfect life. My fathers will receive me pure, not having quailed before your compulsion, though to death. For over the ungodly you will tyrannize, but you will not lord it, master it over my thoughts about my walk, or about the Torah, about religion, either by your arguments or through deeds. This is how a true Hebrew speaks. This is how a true Hebrew speaks. This is the power that we're talking about, y'all. This is the power that we're talking about. Give me 1 second, y'all. Y'all enjoying this so far? This is probably, I might have to change up how I do studies now, because this one probably has been the most, not distracting, but obviously distracting. Of course, I wouldn't want it to be like this, but here you go. Here's your water. There you go. But yeah, you guys know. I just love being able to share this stuff with you guys, because it's beyond. You know, you won't really hear this type of study like this, and you see already how important it is, like how super thorough, but just obviously it's so realistic and so touchable. It's tangible because it is, and this solves so much of just things that we are warring in within our flesh, to be able to understand the reason like the power of reason within wisdom. And this book, I mean, absolutely like kills it. Like it just, there's no book like this one specifically that talks about reason the way it does. You will not find this type of information. You will literally have to have really like connected a lot of dots, but this gives it so much validity and just detail. It's just beautiful. And of course, this is not going to be in our regular canon because of the fact they didn't want us to understand this, of course. So I'm just going to go ahead and continue. Chapter 6. Whatever happens, y'all, whatever in this study, I have to make sure I finish reading everything and tell you guys as much as I can. You can also connect that specific chapter to chapter 2, Wisdom chapter 2. And that one talks about when the people who were unrighteous were following their own unrighteous laws and their own unrighteous instruction, that they initially, later on down in the line in that chapter, they see the righteous man and they decide to try to trap him and create a snare and to test his righteousness, because he was annoying to them to see, and that he, the righteous man who followed the Most High, was like a stain upon them. It hurt them, and they wanted to just torture this man to see if he will stay and walk and walk in the right ways. So it's a direct connection to that chapter and to what Epiphany is doing. Antiochus Epiphanes is literally doing. And essentially what he's doing comes in many forms of this life and how we're living in these countries of what has been created to take you away from the Most High's instructions for following him. Essentially creating a whole fake, like a show, like for you to get lost in your own show, to follow after your own life and your own passions outside of the Most High, not giving him full diligence of thankfulness and literally your life that's owed to him, not following him. This everything has been created to reason outside of everything that we are already reasoning in our hearts and our mind, to connect with the Most High, to connect with the Messiah, with the Holy Spirit, with the Ruach. Like this whole life in the world they have created this whole philosophical approach of their reasoning to get us to change our ways. And this is the simplicity in following the Most High. This is a simplicity because you can literally see it goes in one direction, but it's a beautiful direction. It's a beautiful path. But when you go to the world, that's why it literally says it's wide, because there are so many paths in a wide way that it still leads to the wide pit of hell, or the wide lake of fire, if you'd say. And there's so many approaches to their reasons why you should YOLO and hedonism. It's so many ways to literally go to the lake of fire. But there's only one way to the Father. There's only one way to heaven, and that's through the Messiah. And that's through wisdom. And that's through what we're reading about also, reason. That is within wisdom. So this is why, I'm going to read and make sure I share everything, because this is beyond, this is beautiful. It's just powerful. All right, so chapter 6. When Eleazar had in this manner answered the exhortations of the tyrant, the spear bearers came up and rudely hailed Eleazar the instruments of torture. And first they stripped the old man, adorned as he was with the beauty of piety. Then tying back his arms and hands, they disdainfully used him with stripes. a herald opposite crying out, "Obey the commands of the king." But Eleazar, the high-minded and truly noble, as one tortured in a dream, regarded it not at all. But raising his eyes on high to heaven, the old man's flesh was stripped off by the scourges, and his blood streamed down, and his sides were pierced through, and falling upon the ground from his body having no power to support the pains, he yet kept his reasoning upright and unbending. Remember, reasoning, when you get to this point, literally is a master over the flesh. It's a master over the passions. It's a master of the affections of the passions. Essentially, your voice, your what you speak, how you think. Verse 8, then one of the harsh spear bearers leaped upon his belly as he was falling, to force him upright. But he endured the pains and despised the cruelty and persevered through the indignities. And like a noble athlete, the old man, when struck, vanquished his tortures. His countenance sweating and he panting for breath, he was admired by the very torturers for his courage. For that reason, partly in pity for his old age, partly from the sympathy of acquaintance, and partly in admiration of his endurance, some of the attendants of the king said, "Why do you unreasonably destroy yourself, O Eleazar, with these miseries? We will bring you some meat cooked by yourself, and do you save yourself by pretending that you have eaten swine's flesh?" So now they're telling him, pretend that you ate the pig, so that way you can stop this torture. Pretend. And Eleazar, as through the advice more painfully tortured him, cried out, and look, it says, and Eleazar, as though that advice that seemed wise, it more painfully tortured him, he cried out, "Let not us who are children of Abraham be so evil, advised as by giving way to make use of an unbecoming pretense. For it were irrational if, having lived up to old age in all your truth, and having scrupulously guarded our character for it, that we should now turn back, and ourselves should become a pattern of impiety to the young, and as being an example of pollution eating." So he's saying literally, especially in the old age, right, that it's for you to have lived your old age and guarded the Most High's ways for so long, that even through pretending to do something that isn't right unto the Most High is irrational to the point that you would be initially showing the young a bad example of following all the way through, of fighting the good fight. Because you were living this good fight, you were living this life in fighting a good fight this whole entire time through the strifes that we endured. And so even by pretending to get yourself out initially with this, what he was advised to do, get him outside of the torture, that's still in itself sin. And it's interesting because it does put the Messiah to open shame, as it talks about in Hebrews 6, where it says that there's no forgiveness for that, because if you've tasted of all these things in your life and literally regarding the word essentially, and then all of a sudden you wanted to live, against the Most High, or live against the instructions, even if it was pretending, even if it's light, because you purposely did it and you reasoned upon yourself, that's you can't come back from that. So now you have a direct connection in 4th Maccabees with that chapter, with those specific verses in that chapter. Crazy. Verse 20. It would be disgraceful If we should live on some short time in that scorned by all men for cowardice, and be condemned by the tyrant for unmanliness, by not contending to the death of our divine law, for our divine law. For this reason do you, O children of Abraham, for this reason do you, O children of Abraham, die nobly for your religion. You spear bearers of the tyrant, why do you linger? Now he's telling the spear bearers, why are y'all sitting there waiting to torture me? Go ahead. That is cold. That is so cold. Verse 24, beholding him so high-minded against misery, and not changing at their pity, they led him to the fire. Then with their wickedly contrived instruments, they burned him on the fire and poured stinking fluids down into his nostrils. And he, being at length burned to the bones and about to expire, raised his eyes towards the Most High and said, You know, Abba, that when I might have been saved, I am slain for the sake of the Torah, for your instructions by tortures of fire. Be merciful to your people, and be satisfied with the punishment of me on their account. Remember, he is a high priest, y'all. Let my blood be a purification for them, and take my life in recompense for theirs. Now you literally see the Messiah also in these scriptures. Did the Messiah not go through what he went through? Now you have so much more of a picture of legit, more of the reason why the Messiah did what he did. And what his mindset was on, and because of his reason, in wisdom, in his spirit, became that perfect sacrifice. This is not even a perfect sacrifice. This is the old man who eventually was living a perfect life initially, or to get where he is at this moment. He still was born into sin in his life. But at this moment right here, he's showing his perfection, that he perfected this walk in his old age. For however long he was, obviously living in the Word. But he's showing those literal purged fruits. And he's becoming a first fruit of what was created, or him being created as a first fruit of the Messiah. He's literally giving himself as a first fruit back to the Messiah, back to the Father, to the vine dresser, to the vine. Verse 30. Therefore speaking, the holy man departed, noble in his torments, and even to the agonies of death, resisted in his reasoning for the sake of the law. He resisted in his reasoning for the sake of the Torah, for the sake of the law. Confessedly, therefore, religious reasoning is master of the passions. For had the passions been superior to reasonings, I would have given them the witness of this. I would have given them the witness of this mastery. But now, since reasoning conquered the passions, we befittingly awarded it the authority of first place. And it is but fair that we should allow that the power belongs to reasoning, since it masters external miseries. The things that you're going through, the tortures that you're going through, the strife that we're going through the power of reasoning, is even master of those things, which we understand because you connect it to scriptures, right? Where even a lot of people will say well, the Most High will not give you more than what you could bear. Look, can any of us really bear this? I would say no. I would say maybe I probably would have died earlier, but I would say yes if I get to this point where I'm like Eliezer, right? We could say yes. We don't know how much torture, quote unquote, each person can endure. But, it's interesting when women go through the actual process of childbearing process, like literally delivering, that pain is like no other pain on this earth probably. There could probably be some other connections to it that are like that pain, but I mean, women literally, like, you have no choice but to push. You have no choice but to go through that pain, right? So it's just very interesting, like, that through reasoning, like your reasoning for you having this child gets you through that moment. It gets you through that moment, and it directly ties into what we talked about in that last study about that breath that connects us to the Most High if we follow in his wisdom. Literally is the labor, is that same breath, is that labor that is with that he labored for his people that follow him to get them back to himself, like that specific labor. And that the reasoning, he loves us that much enough for us to get back to him, because and set all this stuff up for us to really understand that Adam and Eve did not understand. Because if they understood this, they would have lived perfectly. But they didn't understand it fully, but we can. Like, how great is his love? How endless is his wisdom? Like, can't even fathom it. So, verse 33, since reasoning conquered the passions, we befittingly awarded it the authority of first place. And it is but fair that we should allow that the power belongs to reasoning, since it masters external miseries. Ridiculous would it be were it not so, and I prove that reasoning has not only mastered pains, but that it is also superior to pleasures and withstands them. The reasoning of our father Eleazar, like a first-rate pilot, steering the vessel of piety in the sea of passions, chapter 7, and floated by the threats of the tyrant, and overwhelmed with the breakers of torture, and in no way shifted the rudder of piety until it sailed into the harbor of victory over death. Not so has ever a city, when besieged, held out against many and various machines, as did that holy man when his pious soul was tried with the fiery trial of tortures and racking. Move his besigners through the religious reasoning that shielded him. It's saying literally not even a whole city full of men, full of weapons, could a city even withstand an attack that's besieged, that they're getting overwhelmed, could have even withstood like Eleazar did because of his reasoning. Because of his reasoning, locked in to being pious, to being wise, to loving the instructions, to care for the instructions. Like, you guys see how connected this is. Like, for Father, let me put her down. For Father Eleazar, projecting his disposition, broke the raging waves of the passions, as with a jutting promontory. So some of these y'all gonna have to look up. Obviously, y'all gotta read it, reread it. Make sure you underline these words so that way you looked it up. Because I don't have access to my laptop right now in a free way, as you can tell. So let's continue. Verse 6. O priest worthy of the priesthood. So now we see he's a walking in truth. He's actually worthy of his priesthood. Interesting connection there. You didn't pollute your sacred teeth, nor make your appetite, which had always embraced the clean and lawful, and partaker of profanity. O harmonizer with the law, and sage devoted to a divine life. Of such a character ought those to be whom perform the duties of the law. Of such a character of prudence, of those to be who performed the duties of the instructions at their risk of their own blood and defended with generous sweat by sufferings even to death. You, Father, have gloriously established our right government by your endurance and making of much account our service past, preventing its destruction, and by your deeds have made credible the words of philosophy. O aged man of more power than tortures, elder, more vigorous than fire, greatest king over the passions, Eleazar. For as Father Aaron, armed with his censer, hastening through the consuming fire, vanquished the flame-bearing angel, so Eleazar, the descendant of Aaron, wasted away by the fire, didn't give up his reasoning. And what is most wonderful, though an old man, though the labors of his body were now spent, and his muscles were relaxed, and his sinews worn out. We read about that, right? The sinews that connect the tissues and all of that to the bones. The muscles is to the bones. His sinews were worn out. He still recovered his youth. It's crazy. By the spirit of reasoning and the reasoning of Isaac, he rendered powerless the many-headed instrument. O blessed old age and reverend hoarhead, and life obedient to the law, which the faithful seal of death perfected. If then an old man, through religion, despised tortures even to death, confessedly religious reasoning is ruler of the passions. But perhaps some might say it is not all who conquer passions, as all do not possess wise reasoning. Wise reasoning. All do not possess wise reasoning. So now you see there's a specific difference. But they who have meditated upon religion with their whole heart, these alone can master the passions of the flesh. There's the key. They who have meditated upon this religion, this devotion that we have to the Torah with their whole heart, only these alone can master the passions of the flesh. Why do you think the Messiah says, love Abba with your whole heart, all your mind, and all your soul? Literally, wisdom in Messiah says it to us. And it's one of the two greatest commandments that hang on everything. And love your neighbor as yourself. And it says here that wisdom, that these people who are people who will possess wise reasoning are the only ones who will have it, that will meditate upon their devotion to this Torah, to the Messiah, to the Father, with their whole heart. That's why this heart has everything to do with it. Because then you will be a master. You will master the passions of the flesh. Verse 19, they who believe that to the Father they die not. For as our forefathers Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, they live unto the Most High. This circumstance then is by no means an objection that some who have weak reasoning are governed by their passion. Some who have weak reasoning are governed by their passions. Since what person walking religiously by the whole rule of philosophy and believing in the Father and knowing that it is a blessing to endure all kinds of hardship for virtue would not, for the sake of religion, master his passion? So he's saying, if you are walking, right? If you're truly walking and believing the Father, so not just saying Romans 10:9 that you believe that the Messiah has raised from the dead, right? That if you're truly walking in it, And you know it's a blessing to endure all types of hardships for virtue. You know these things. You know about wisdom. Who, if any of those people, wouldn't master their passions? For the sake of your walk, why wouldn't you master your passion? Verse 23, for the wise and brave man only is master over his passions. From where it is that even boys, trained with the philosophy of religious reasoning, have conquered still more bitter tortures. Even young people. For when the tyrant was manifestly vanquished in his first attempt, in being able to force the old man to eat the unclean thing, then it goes into chapter 8. It goes into chapter 8. So I think John 4:23. Can't really look it up, but I got my other phone here. What type of time am I looking at? 41 minutes? Okay. We're doing good. This is around the same time I would have probably been on anyway. So we just gonna flow through. I'm not gonna feel bad. Okay. So let's continue here. Then indeed, vehemently swayed with passion, chapter 8, he commanded to bring the others of the adult Hebrews, and if they would eat of the unclean thing, to let them go when they had eaten. But if they objected, to torment them also more grievously. So more grievously than Eliezer. The tyrant having given this charge, 7 kindred brought into his presence, along with their aged mother, handsome and modest and well-born, and altogether comely. When the tyrant saw them encircling their mother, as in a dance, he was pleased at them, and being struck with their becoming and innocent manner, smiled upon them, and calling them near, said, this is Epiphanes speaking. O youth, with favorable feelings, I admire the beauty of each of you, and greatly honoring so numerous a band of kindred, I not only counsel you not to share the madness of the old man, who has been tortured before, but I do beg you to yield. Does that sound like Matsima, Satan, to the Messiah in the wilderness? And to enjoy my friendship, for I possess the power. Yes, sister. John 4:23. Absolutely. I possess the power not only of punishing those who disobey my commands, but of doing good to those who obey them. But confidence in me, then, you will receive places of authority in my government. If you forsake your national ordinance. Notice in Jubilees, I think it's chapter 5, it does say that everybody has an ordained path. And if you forsake it, I'm actually going to look that up. I got my arm free here. And I'll summarize it. I don't want to wake BB up. That basically, if you forsake your ordained path, that you are obviously you're already going to be in judgment to basically be in eternal torments because you forsook your ordained path. There's just a paraphrase on it, but it's in Jubilees. I believe it's in chapter 5, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe 3. I know it's not for sure in 3. Could be in 2. All right, so continuing. Verse 7, and conforming to the Greek mode of life, alter your rule and revel in youth's delights. For if you provoke me by your disobedience, you will compel me to destroy you, everyone, with terrible punishments by tortures. Have mercy, then, upon your own selves, whom I, although an enemy, compassionate for your age and attractive appearance, Will you not reason upon this, that if you disobey, there will be nothing left for you but to die in tortures? Y'all see what's going on here? So speaking, he ordained the instruments of torture to be brought forward, that very fear, that Phobos fear, might prevail upon them to eat unclean meat. So he's doing all these tactics. Don't you realize, literally, this is what the enemy does? Not only in the physical realm, but in the spiritual realm, because it's going to manifest in the physical. So he's talking, doing all these different things, and he's bringing this stuff out, these instruments of torture, to further try to convince them to forsake the Most High, to bring upon Phobos fear, not Yer fear, which is reverential fear. Verse 12, and when the spearmen brought forward the wheels and the racks and the hooks and catapults and cauldrons and pans and finger racks and iron hands and wedges and bellows, the tyrant continued. Fear, young men, and the righteousness which you worship will be merciful to you if you err from compulsion. So now he's trying to use the word again and say, like, if you fall short a little bit here, you'll get forgiveness of sins. That's literally in itself, once saved, always saved, right? Verse 14, now they, having listened to these words of persuasion and sing the fearful instruments, not only were not afraid, but even answered the arguments of the tyrant, and through their good reasoning destroyed his power. Now let's consider the matter. So listen to this. Let's consider the matter. Had any of them been weak-spirited and cowardly among them, what reasoning they had employed but these? So he's going to tell you now how it would sound in their reasoning if they were weak-spirited and cowardly. O wretched that we are, and exceedingly senseless. When the king exhorts us and calls us to his bounty, should we not obey him? Why do we cheer ourselves with vain counsels and venture upon a disobedience bringing death? Will we not fear, brothers, the instrument of torture, and look at, basically, I'm paraphrasing, weigh the threats of torment and look upon this vain glory and destructive pride? So basically, like, should we not consider what's going on right now and what's about to happen to us? Let's have compassion upon our age and relent over the years of our mother. Let's bear in mind that we will be dying as rebels, and divine justice will pardon us if we fear the king through necessity. Why withdraw ourselves from a most sweet life and deprive ourselves of this pleasant world? Sorry, y'all. Why withdraw, verse 22, why withdraw ourselves from a most sweet life and deprive ourselves of this pleasant world? Let's not oppose necessity nor seek vainglory by our excruciation. The Torah itself is not forward to put us to death if we dread torture. This is a connection to a misconception here. The law itself is not forward to put us to death if we dread torture. From where has such angry zeal taken root in us, and such fatal obstinacy approved itself to us, when we might live unmolested by the king? So this is, when you read it again, this is the reasoning behind what they feel. Reasoning behind if they would have been weak-spirited and cowardly. And please connect this directly to chapter 2 of the Book of Wisdom, because you're going to see the exact same type of reasoning, but in a different manner. It's one and the same. It's just a different situation where they weren't necessarily in torments. They wanted to take part in the pleasures that we read about earlier in the chapter where it talks about pleasures. They wanted to take part in the pleasures, and then they saw a righteous man, and it annoyed them. It started frustrating their unrighteous thinking. So verse 26, it says, "But nothing of this kind did the young men say or think when about to be tortured, for they were well aware of the sufferings and masters of the pains. So that as soon as the tyrant had ceased counseling them to eat the unclean, they all together, one voice as from the same heart, said, 'Why delay you, O tyrant? For we are more ready to die than to transgress the injunctions of our fathers. And we should be disgracing our fathers if we didn't obey the Torah and take knowledge for our guide. O tyrant counselor of law-breaking, do not, hating us as you do, pity us more than we pity ourselves. For we account escape to be worse than death.'" So we see not doing what the Most High wants us to do and trying to give ourselves an out. We see that worse than death. "And you think to scare us by threatening us with death by tortures, as though you had learned nothing by the death of Eleazar." "But if these are young men speaking, y'all. If aged men of the Hebrews have died in the cause of religion after enduring torture, more rightly should we younger men die, scorning your cruel tortures, which our aged instructor overcame." So he's saying, why wouldn't it's even more so our fire, our walking in the truth would be shown if our aged instructor did it, and he's the one who taught us. That's a lot. That connects with Titus 2, when Titus 2 where it talks about what the older women should be doing for the younger women, and the older men should be doing for the younger men, and so that way the younger men will understand how to walk in truth as well as the young women. So you read that in Deuteronomy where it says to teach your children my instructions, right? It says write it on the doorposts. It talks about talking about it at the dinner table, having it all throughout your house. Like, this is the reason. Because these young men, this is how young men, young women, or a young woman could obviously speak in the same manner if they're locked in to understanding how we are supposed to walk in wisdom, within reasoning especially. Verse 7, "Make the attempt then, O tyrant, and if you put us to death for your religion, think not that you harm us by torturing us. For we through this ill treatment and endurance will bear off the rewards of virtue. But you, for the wicked and despotic slaughter of us, will from the divine vengeance endure eternal torture by fire." When they had so spoken, the tyrant was not so easily exasperated against them as being refractory, but enraged with them as being ungrateful. So that at his bidding, the torturers brought out the oldest of them, and tearing through his tunic, bound his hands and arms on each side with thongs. And when they had labored hard without effect in scourging him, they hurled him upon the wheel, and the noble youth extended upon this became dislocated, and with every member disjointed, he exclaimed in expostulation. It's another fire word. "Almost accursed tyrant." So you can use your senses. Their bones are being dislocated, tortures, and they're like in this, they're receiving pain. So the way that they're speaking on this, I'm not going to raise my voice, obviously, but you can use your senses. "O most accursed tyrant and enemy of heavenly justice and cruel-hearted, I am no murderer, no sacrilegious man whom you so ill use, but a defender of the divine law. And when the spearmen said, 'Consent to eat that you may be released from your tortures,' he answered, 'Not so powerful, or accused ministers, is your will, as to stifle my reasoning. Cut my limbs and burn my flesh and twist my joints, for through all my torments I will convince you that the children of the Hebrews are alone, unconquered in behalf of virtue. This is what it means to truly be set apart. Isn't it interesting? It says limbs and flesh and joints. And then the scripture that says that the word pierces even through the joints and the marrow. Oh my goodness. Verse 19, while he was saying this, they heaped up fuel and setting fire to it, strained him upon the wheel still more. And the wheel was defiled all over with blood, and the hot ashes were quenched by the droppings of gore, and pieces of flesh were scattered about the axles of the machine. And although the framework of his bones was now destroyed, the high-minded and Abrahamic youth didn't groan. But as though transformed by the fire into immortality, what did John the Baptist tell us that the Messiah was going to do that he could not do? That the Messiah will baptize in spirit and in fire, in the spirit and in fire. But as though transformed by fire into immortality. Transformed by fire into immortality. If y'all remember also, when you go to Wisdom, chapter 6, Wisdom chapter 6, it says, for wisdom's true beginning, verse 17, is desire for instruction. And desire for instruction is love. And love is observance of her laws. To give heed to her laws confirms immortality. You see, these young men are giving heed to the instructions because they desire the instruction. They already have that reason in them. And because of that desire and reason for the word, they have true love, true wisdom, in which the love that they have is observing this Torah to the very end, no matter what they endure. And by giving heed to those instructions, it confirms immortality. And immortality brings closeness to the fire. So then desire for wisdom promotes to a kingdom. Seek ye first the kingdom of the Father, and all these things will be added unto you. It's not without wisdom. Verse 22, but as though transformed by fire into immortality, he nobly endured the racking, saying, imitate me, O kindred, nor ever desert your station, nor renounce my brotherhood in courage. Fight the holy and honorable fight of religion, by which means our just and paternal providence, becoming merciful to the nation, will punish the pestilent tyrant. And saying this, the revered youth abruptly closed his life. And when all admired his courageous soul, the spearmen brought forward him who was second in point of age, and having put on iron hands, bound him with pointed hooks to the torture device. And when on inquiring whether he would eat before he was tortured, they heard his noble sentiment. After they with the iron hands had violently dragged all the flesh from the neck to the chin, the panther-like beast tore off the very skin of his head. But he, bearing with firmness this misery, said, how sweet is every form of death for the religion of our fathers. And he said to the tyrant, do you think, most cruel of all tyrants, that you are now tortured more than I? finding your overweening conception of tyranny conquered by our perseverance in behalf of our religion? For I lighten my suffering by the pleasures which are connected with virtue. He said, I lighten my suffering by the pleasures which are connected with virtue. But you are tortured with threats from impiety, and you will not escape, most corrupt tyrant, the vengeance of divine wrath. You remember when the Messiah told that one person to drop all that he had to follow him, and he couldn't? This is what is required, y'all. This is why not everybody's going to be tortured like this. May not ever. But we have to really get this. Because even if we go through this, this is the only way we can escape, by being this locked in. This is why this is no joke. This is why you work out your faith with fear and trembling. Making your election sure. This is why. This is self-evaluation. Where are you at compared to this? How much work do we really need to do? We want Messiah to return so much. We want to be with our Father and our Messiah so much. But are we ready for that? I myself know I still have more I can do, because this is where I want to be at. I wanted to be here before I even read this book because of what I've seen Moses do. Remember when I talked about that, if anybody remembers, but when he literally fell down on his knees and prayed to the Most High, turned away from the people that was trying to come at him. And I said, that right there is literally true meekness. And that is true meekness, because within the reasoning that he had, it comes from the power over the passions and the mastery over it, in which it's unto prudence, virtue, etc. This is literally telling us what a true Hebrew is. Abrahamic youth. That's why it says the right side of Abraham, or Abraham's bosom, is literally where we would go if we're judged as righteous, because Abraham is on the right side, not on the left side of the abyss where it's a place of condemnation. Let's see here. I'm going to go for it, y'all. Let's just continue. Chapter 10. Now this one, having endured this praiseworthy death, the third was brought along, and exhorted by many to taste and save his life. But he cried out and said, Do you not know that the father of those who are dead became the father of me also? And that the same mother bore me, and that I was brought up in the same tenets? I renounce not the noble relationship of my kindred. Now then, whatever instrument of vengeance you have, apply it to my body, for you are not able to touch, even if you wish, my soul. But they highly incensed at his boldness of speech, dislocated his hands and feet with racking engines, and wrenching them from their sockets, dismembering him. And they dragged round his fingers and his arms and his legs and his ankles. And not being able by any means to strangle him, they tore off his skin, together with the extreme tips of his fingers, and then dragged him to the wheel, around which his vertebral joints were loosened, and he saw his own flesh torn to shreds and streams of blood flowing from his entrails. And when about to die, he said, We, O accursed tyrant, suffer this for the sake of divine education and virtue. But you, for your impiety and bloodshedding, will endure indocible torments. And having died worthily of his kindred, they dragged forward the fourth, saying, Do not share the madness of your kindred, but give regard to the king and save yourself. But he said to them, "You have not a fire so scorching as to make me play the coward. By the blessed death of my kindred, and the eternal punishment of the tyrant, and the glorious life of the pious, I will not repudiate the noble brotherhood. Invent, O tyrant, tortures, that you may learn, even through them, that I am the brother of those tormented before." Hold on. It says, "Invent, O tyrant, tortures, that you may learn even through them that I am the brother of those tormented before." When he had said this, the bloodthirsty and murderous and unhallowed Antiochus ordered his tongue to be cut out. But he said, "Even if you take away the organ of speech, yet the Most High hears the silent. Behold, my tongue is extended, cut it off, for by that you won't haunt my reasoning. Gladly do we lose our limbs in behalf of the Father, but the Father will speedily find you, since you cut off the tongue, the instrument of divine melody." Dang. Yeah, so you guys go ahead, read chapter 11 too. So I'm going to skip to verse 14. It says, "I am indeed younger than my brothers, but in understanding I am as old. For having been born and reared to the same end, we are bound to die also in behalf of the same cause. So that if you think proper to torment us for not eating the unclean, then torment." As he said this, they brought him to the wheel, extended upon which, with limbs racked and dislocated, he was gradually roasted from beneath. So it talks about what they did to him. In verse 20 it says, he says, "O period good and holy, in which for the sake of religion we kindred have been called to the contest of pain, and have not been conquered. For religious understanding, O tyrant, is unconquered. Armed with upright virtue, righteous reasoning, righteous character, righteous living, morally sound living, I also will depart with my kindred. I too bearing with me a great avenger, O inventor of tortures, an enemy of the truly pious." You notice that those fallen angels, especially Azazel, was an inventor of weapons. He taught men how to make weapons. Isn't that interesting? Isn't it interesting? It's crazy. "We 6 youths have destroyed your tyranny. For it is not your inability to overrule our reasoning and to compel us to eat the unclean your destruction. Dang. Your fire is cold to us. Your devices are painless. Your violence harmless. For the guards not of a tyrant, but of a divine law, are our defenders. Through this we keep our reasoning unconquered." So in the next chapter, you see another one having to go through tortures and things like that. So go ahead and read it, of course, after, hopefully after the study or whenever you need to. But in verse 14 it says, "But they bravely dying fulfilled their religion towards the Most High." So in James chapter 1, verse 27, read it from the Scriptures version. You'll notice something very cool here. If I could get to it with my limitations over here. So go to James 1:27. It says, clean and undefiled religion before the Most High, before the Father and the Messiah is this: to visit orphans and widows in their affliction, and to keep oneself unstained from the world. Unstained from the world. Direct connection to James 1:27. These brave young men fulfilled their religion towards the Most High. Verse 13, chapter 1 and verse 13. If then the seven kindred despise troubles even to death, it is confessed on all sides that righteous reasoning is absolute master over the passions. For just as if, had they as slaves to the passions eaten of the unholy, we should have said that they had been conquered. Now it is not so, but by means of the reasoning which is praised by the Father, they mastered their passions. For it is impossible to overlook the leadership of reflection, for it gained the victory over both passions and troubles. So initially in their verbal reasoning, because that was another portion of the reasoning that I was going to explain earlier, verbal reasoning, let's just say, just in a general sense, they were verbally expressing their reasons and solidifying why they were locked into what they were locked in. And through that, there's leadership in reflection, reflecting on literally the Torah. You can't reflect on something you don't know. But because they knew wisdom, and wisdom was within them, wisdom spoke through them in the leadership of reflection, and gained victory, because that's what wisdom allows us to do. That's what the Spirit allows us to do. How then can we avoid, verse 5, according to these men, mastery of passions through right reasoning, since they drew not back from the pains of fire? For just as by means of towers projecting in front of harbors, men break the threatening waves, therefore assure a still course to vessels entering port. So that seven-towered right reasoning of the young men securing harbor of religion conquered the intemperance of passions. So they conquered the uncontrolled nature of passions, because they had temperance within reasoning, which is self-control within reasoning. And remember, earlier it already said reasoning doesn't eradicate what the passions and what are naturally inside of man. That's why it says about the strife, right? So notice when you go read Apocalypse of Elijah, when you're doing a pure fast, it says to do this often because of the strife that is within men. These passions that are already in men that are at strife because of sin, that when you're doing something pure unto the Most High, especially specifically this pure fast, you're denying your flesh fully. And so therefore, at the end of your pure fast, or even during, you're gaining pure hands, pure heart, pure mind. And therefore, you're able to literally break sin away from you. You're able to destroy demons. So notice, literally, that there's reasoning. There's a righteous reasoning that is within wisdom, because you had to reason in your mindset, in your logic, and in your heart to devote religiously, as it says in here, to the Most High, your whole body. We're essentially in the pure fast sacrifice, giving our body unto sacrifice, unto afflictions. Often, so that way we can literally share in this life, as sister says here, laying our life down to live unto Him. So notice that's what a pure fast is, right? It brings even more understanding to that, and the worship, truly bowing yourself down unto Him. And so if it says live unto Him daily, take upon your cross daily, what do you think it's saying? This is how we're supposed to live. daily, because by doing this, we will be perfect. What can sin do to us if we live this way? But we have to reason unto it, and only ones that will reason and gain this mastery over the passions, to withhold it, to keep it at bay, while we are still utilizing the Spirit to fight demons, because we have a soul tie to these demons. We're not going to stop fighting them until we finish. So that's why reason can't eradicate the sins or the passions. It can't eradicate it, because we already have a direct soul tie to it, to fighting it spiritually in this warfare. That's how the Messiah, literally to his very end of his life in our flesh, was fighting until the very end. But through his reasoning, he was still a master over the passions, over this flesh. So then it goes on to talk about the brotherly love here. So notice that the second greatest command that the Messiah talks about is loving your neighbor as yourself. And this chapter here gives so much detail to a brotherly love that it's just amazing, because it connects with what all these brothers, these 7 brothers, did in one accord, receiving torture one after each other, watching the one get tortured, and still all locked in, and essentially iron sharpening iron, to the very youngest being the last one, which you think would be the one to break. But he was he was like the strongest, in a sense, if you want to say it that way. The enemy is so detailed that he would try to do something like that. But the youngest one's still like, nope, locked in, go ahead, keep it going. So verse 13 of chapter 13, part B, it says, let us sacrifice with all our heart and all our souls to the Most High, who gave them, and employ our bodies for the keeping of the Torah. Why do you think the Most High, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, the Ruach, will make their home in you when you truly love him in his ways, and your body is a temple, and your body is bought with a price? You're giving your whole being to the Most High as your first fruit. Verse 14, let's not fear him who thinks he kills. For great is the trial of soul and danger of eternal torment laid up for those who transgress the commandment of the Most High. So notice it says in the word, Messiah says, do not fear the ones who will kill the body, but fear the one who can destroy the soul. Verse 16, let's arm ourselves, therefore, in the self-control, in the temperance, which is divine reasoning. So self-control, true temperance in the Ruach, in the Holy Spirit, is divine reasoning. It's an action. It's a constant thing that you can literally be master over your passions. If we are master over our passions in this flesh, how can we sin? And that's not without wisdom, because in order to be master over the passions and to have control over self, you need his instructions. Therefore, you need wisdom to literally be in your very fiber, in your blood, flowing in your blood, in your mind, in your heart, in your Ruach, to be a master over these passions. It says, verse 17, if we suffer like this, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob will receive us, and all the fathers will commend us. Verse 18, as each one of the kindred was hauled away, the rest exclaimed, disgrace us not, O brother, nor falsify those who died before you. Now you are not ignorant of the charm of brotherhood, which the divine and all-wise providence has imparted through the fathers to children, and has engendered them through the mother's womb. Why do you think it also says, I will write my word on the tablets of their heart. This is what it means. This is how you really will know who are his. This is the ones that are his. These are the ones who are his. Verse 20, in which these brothers, having remained in equal time and having been formed for the same period and been increased by the same blood, having been perfected through the same principle of life, and having been brought out at equal intervals, having sucked milk from the same springs, hence their brotherly souls are reared up lovingly together. The laborers are few, right? But the harvest is plenty. Verse 22, and increase the more powerfully by reason of this simultaneous rearing, and by daily intercourse, and by other education and exercise in the law of the Most High. Brotherly love being so sympathetically constituted, the seven kindred had a more sympathetic mutual harmony. Why do you think it says do not be unequally yoked? Because you can't get to this point if you're unequally yoked. Verse 24, for being educated in the same Torah instructions and practicing the same virtues, reared up a just course, a righteous course of life. They increased his harmony with each other, iron sharpening iron. For like ardor, what is right and honorable, increased their fellow feeling toward each other. For it acting along with religion made their brotherly feeling more desirable to them. And yet, although nature and intercourse and virtuous morals increased their brotherly love, those who were left endured to behold their kindred, who were ill used for their religion, tortured even to death. And more than this, this one is beautiful too. Yeah, I'll go ahead, go. More than this, they even urged them, chapter 14, to this ill treatment, we're almost done, so that they not only despised pains themselves, but even got the better of their affections of brotherly love. O reasoning more royal than a king and freer than freemen. Remember, free man. Remember in Wisdom, chapter 7, verse 22, it says wisdom is like, it's like a freeness. It can't even be contained. It's like air. It's free. So verse 7, I'm going to skip down to verse 7. O holy seven of harmonious kindred, for as the 7 days of creation about religion, so the youth circling around the number 7 annulled the fear of torment. So they were complete. Like that's how number 7 is usually, symbolized as. So I put First Chronicles. I think it's Second Chronicles. Let me go to this. I think I have notes for chapter 13. I had notes for chapter 13, but chapter 14. Yeah, I thought I put it on there, but it's somewhere. Second Chronicles, I think, y'all. Yep, I probably took the wrong screenshot, but it's all good. But basically, in Second Chronicles or First Chronicles, chapter 7, one of those, that basically, when they were finishing up the temple, I think it was Hezekiah was finishing up the temple, that they actually gave sacrifices, and the initial sacrifice was like 7 rams, 7 lambs, and 7 something else. But it was all 7s. And then eventually they had the people, but they had to actually consecrate the temple first with these specific sacrifices, which were in 7s. So I thought it was just a really good connection. But when you think about the number 7 and 7 days of creation, you think about, you can think about these 7 young men. And it does say that it talks about the mother, because you have to remember the mother was there too. So the mother was watching all of her sons being tortured, and she literally would be the 8th person. So that 8th day, is so connected to this as well. Because now you see the mother, she literally, if anyone, has to watch through all of her sons getting tortured. And I believe she herself ends up being tortured. But it says, you have to read that chapter. It says in verse 11, a woman's mind despised more manifold pains. Verse 12, for the mother of those 7 youths endured the rackings of each of her children, and consider how comprehensive is the love of offspring, which draws everyone to sympathy of affection, where irrational animals possess a similar sympathy and love for their offspring with men. The tame birds frequenting the roofs of our houses defend their fledglings. Others build their nests and hatch their young in the tops of mountains, in the precipices of valleys, in the holes and tops of trees, and keep them off the intruder. If not able to do this, they fly circling around them in agony of affection, calling out in their own note, and save their offspring in whatever manner they are able. Wow. But why should we point attention to the sympathy towards children shown by irrational animals? The very bees at the season of honey making attack all who approach, and pierce with their sting as with a sword those who draw near their hive, and repel them even to death. But sympathy with her children didn't turn away the mother of the young men who had a spirit kindred with that of Abraham. O reasoning of the sons, master over the passions and religion, more desirable to a mother than progeny. When 2 things were set before her, here, religion and the safety of her 7 sons for a time, she rather elected the religion which, according to the Most High, preserves to eternal life. In what way can I describe ethically the affections of parents towards their children, the resemblance of soul and of form engrafted into the small type of a child in a wonderful manner, especially due to great sympathy of mothers with the feelings of those born of them. So definitely, you guys, literally read this chapter. Verse 15, it says, she saw her children's flesh dissolving. She was tried, it says, O mother, verse 16, was tried at this time with bitterer pangs than those of parturition. O you only woman who have brought out perfect holiness. So notice Mary, right? Mary watching her son, whom also is the Messiah, go through the tortures that he went through, even throughout his whole life, for all the things that he was going through in his life, and the path that he had, to the point where he's tortured her only son as a criminal, and she could do nothing but to be in holiness, because she knew what was the deal. So when you read how her and her sister rose in the morning, how her and her sister went to go run to the I'm sorry, I'm losing my words, but to the rock, or when the grave site, in a sense, where I forgot the word for it, but when Peter is like, the rock is removed, and how fast they were running to the tomb. Like, think about how much joy and how much, like, they're like, what? Are you serious? What you mean his body isn't there? He rose? Like that's, you get to literally see and feel, try to feel more of what that is through the senses when you're reading literally this chapter about the mother watching her own 7 children go through tortures and literally be on fire for the Most High. And the words that they were speaking, how much joy and life do you think she was literally in her spirit? How much on fire her spirit was. So people usually don't read this chapter or this letter. But First John, or I think it's Third John, or I'm sorry, Second John. So it says, verse 4, I rejoice greatly because I found some of your children walking in truth as we receive command from the Father. Yeah. That was just one of the things that John had wrote in that one. I really do like these scriptures. Yeah. Oh, and then I'm sorry. So in 3 John, he also writes, I have, verse 4, I have no greater joy than to hear of my children walking in truth. See? So you get a whole different feel, a whole different portion of your senses when you read this chapter about the mother looking upon her children. And she was aged. It's crazy. And then it'll give you a framework of saying like how she could have felt if she was weak, if she was in a different mindset. It talks about that as well. So in verse 24 or 25 of chapter 16, it says, and they saw this too, that they who die for the Most High live to the Most High. So it's interesting when it says that you die, right, to your old self and raised in a new self in the Messiah, right? You're resurrected in the Messiah. This is what it means. This is literally what it means. Where you die to your old self and you live unto the Most High, like you're literally supposed to be dying to your flesh. This is how we were supposed to be taught to master our passions in wisdom so we can truly walk in the right ways, conquering on earth this life to walk as perfect as we can in the Messiah. But all this hyper grace, they think that's better than what we're learning in true wisdom. It's crazy. Verse 15 of chapter 17. And reverence for the Most High conquered and crowned her own athletes. Who didn't admire those champions of true legislation? Who were not asinine? The tyrant himself, all their counsel admired their endurance, through which also they now stand beside the divine throne and live a blessed life. For Moses says, and all the saints under your and all the saints are under your hands. These therefore, having been sanctified through the Father, have been honored not only with this honor, but that also by their means the enemy didn't overcome our nation, and that the tyrant was punished and their country purified. For they became the ransom to the sin of the nation, and a divine providence saved Israel, previously afflicted by the blood of those pious ones in the propitiatory death. You ever realize what it's saying here? These 8, literally, sanctified through the Most High, saved, turned all that around. So you read First Maccabees, and it's all about Judas, right? Maccabees. But look, you have another connection here. So, last chapter, chapter 18. O Israelitish children, descendants of the seed of Abraham, obey this Torah, and in every way be religious, knowing that religious reasoning is the Lord, the master of passions, and those not only inward but outward. Why? Because the soul and the body, right? When those persons giving up their bodies to pains for the sake of religion were not only admired by men, but were deemed worthy of a divine portion. So when you go read Enoch 103 through 104, you're going to see what it talks about the afflictions of those who are righteous and how they are deemed as righteous because of their afflictions. That's okay. Yeah. It's okay. I know I'm talking all in your ear. Almost done, y'all. So read Enoch 103 through 104. And then I'll read all the way to, I'm going to read verse 23. But the children of Abraham, with their victorious mother, are assembled together to the choir of their father, having received pure and immortal souls from the Father, to whom be glory forever and ever. Amen. So, and it also gives a shout out in this chapter to the father of those, to the dad of those children, which was obviously the husband of the mother. And it talks about literally the dad teaching them and telling them about literally the word every day. Verse 10, it says, he used to teach you, yet with you the law and the prophets. So notice that the mother was older. So obviously the dad passed away before, whenever time that happened. So it's only the 8 of them. Interestingly enough, 8 people were saved, right, with the ark. So it's only the 8 of them, and then they're literally sanctified through their master of reasoning and enduring their torture that they went through. So, I mean, this is 4th Maccabees. This is like, please read it. Please, obviously revisit. This is like literally what I wanted to share with y'all, because it's beyond powerful, like of understanding how we are supposed to really be living our life to complete this course, complete this walk, and what is coming for us. We have to be on that level. Like, that is complete, in its finest complete. Even connecting it to Abraham, Jacob, Isaac, like literally it's all connected to saying this is how you win. And it's the Messiah is all up, he's literally all in these chapters, because you just got a full picture of the Messiah and what he did in his specific life. We got to see 7 or 8 people, or we also saw Elijah, right? We saw the high priest, and you see the high priest. So when you read in Hebrews about the high priest, now you can think about Elijah and what he endured, and why literally the Messiah is able to be the high priest, the only one fully now that stands in between us, because we have to go through him in order to receive heaven, right? To be with the Father. That he's the only perfect sacrifice, because he literally did this whole life without sin. Even the people that we see in 4th Maccabees didn't say that they were without sin. It's just that they got it. They got it. Like, they fully got it. You have young people and you have old people. You got the whole spectrum there. You got the whole middle age, everything, literally. So it didn't fail to cover, to leave anything out. But you literally picture the whole Messiah. His sufferings, his reasoning through the spirit of wisdom. You see wisdom if anybody literally denies it at this point, to you, you have to realize like that is essentially part of the Antichrist spirit. The Antichrist spirit is going to deny the wisdom, literally, because it, by essentially denying the wisdom, it's denying the Messiah. So, what an easy way to really see how prevalent the Antichrist spirit is. Because either this understanding is hidden or it's going to be shunned upon. And literally, it's to a point where you can't even, you can preach it, teach it to others, let's just say in that time, but it's like, we'll already be going through our tribulation, so locked in, making sure we're, making our election sure, that it does say in prophecy, and I think in Second Baruch, that literally the wise will not be found, or wisdom won't be able to be spoken anymore by his true followers. Like, we'll be essentially quiet, and no people in the earth that are marked as sinners, especially with the mark of the beast, right, will be able to hear anything from the Torah. And if you watch the book of Eli, remember that the evil guy was trying to have that person who was blind read a scripture from the word, and she denied him. And he was so distraught and so messed up already that he just wanted to hear a word from the Bible, from the scriptures. And she acted like she didn't know, because she could only read it, through the Braille, and he couldn't. And he was messed up. He was messed up. So when you read 1 John, it's going to hit even more, right? The one who says he stays in him ought himself also to walk as he walked. Those who say he is in the light and hates his brother is in the darkness until now. But who loves his brother stays in the light, and there is no stumbling block in him. But the one who hates his brother is in the darkness and walks in the darkness and does not know where he is going, because the darkness has blinded his eyes. I write to you, O fathers, because you have known him from the beginning. I write to you, young men, because you have overcome the wicked one. I write to you, little children, because you have known the Father. I wrote to you, fathers, because you have known him from the beginning. I wrote to you, young men, because you are strong, and the word of the Most High stays in you, and you have overcome the wicked one. Do not love the world, nor that which is in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. Because all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life is not of the Father, but is of the world. Right? Because there is no reasoning in this world that can get you to connect with the Father. Truly, to walk in his ways. There's reasoning, let's just say a flat earth, let's just say, that can convince someone and bring them to truth. But if ultimately we all don't bask and truly make wisdom like our very fiber and being, in which we will literally have reasoning to withhold passions through the understanding of wisdom and the instructions of the Most High, having that in our muscle memory, that's the only way we can actually live unto him and worship in spirit and truth and really make it. But if you're in this world, you can't. So those who are given over to their own reasoning are a reprobate, and there's no convincing them, because the Most High has given them over to their own reasoning. That's why you do see so many reprobates, and that's the mystery of iniquity, isn't it? To see lawlessness abounding, and that's when literally this man of no reasoning, because he's already, this man of old, or this angel of old, Matsima, already reasoned in himself and made his choice, which was the spirit of error. He became the spirit of error. So he made his choice already. This man of old, or this being of old, therefore, when the most high timed, the time of the highest it's ever been in no reasoning of the Father, no reasoning of wisdom, which we know is this wisdom, no reasoning of the word of the Messiah is missing, that's when the man of lawlessness comes and starts tricking, or actually, he starts leading those who are already following him. He literally leads them, right? Because that's what 2 Thessalonians says in chapter 2. The coming of the lawless one, verse 9, is according of the working of Satan, with all power and signs and wonders of falsehood, with all the deceit of unrighteousness in those perishing, because they did not receive the love of the truth in order for them to be saved. You have to receive the love of the truth and walk in it, which is what we're literally been talking about, all this truth, and have to literally reason. You have to have a reason to live in this truth and to love it in order to be saved. In verse 11 it says, for this reason the Most High sends them a working of delusion, for them to believe the falsehood, which is the opposite of the reasoning of the wisdom that we're understanding today. Verse 12, in order that all should be judged who did not believe this truth, but have delighted in the unrighteousness. We're literally learning and seeing, opening our eyes to literally what's going to happen. And for those who will accept it, not accept my word, but accept what we've been reading and understanding, you will see. You will see, if you watch, you're going to see like that marker. Because you'll see wisdom leaving, and essentially the reason, the mastering of the passions, no one will have passions, master over the passions anymore. Fully, because now every single portion of lawlessness will abound. So that's why you do see scriptures where it says that, what does it say in 1 Timothy, I think chapter 3, 1 Timothy chapter 3, if I'm not mistaken, where it says like the love of many will grow cold, adulterers, things like that, right? And I'm just flowing right now, so first chapter 3, 2 Timothy, but know this, that in the last days hard times shall come, for men shall be lovers of self, lovers of silver, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, thankless, wrongdoers, unloving, unforgiving, slanderers, without self-control. We just talked about that. Fierce, haters of good, betrayers, reckless, puffed up, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of the Most High, having a form of reverence, but denying its power, denying reason, denying wisdom, the Spirit. And turn away from these. For among them are those who creep into households and captivate silly women, loaded down with sins, led away by various lusts, always learning and never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. And look, it says verse 10, but you did closely. So Paul is telling Timothy, you did closely follow my teaching, the way of life, the purpose, the belief, the patience, the love, the endurance, the persecutions, the sufferings, which came to me at Antioch, and the persecutions I bore. Yet out of them all the Master delivered me. The Master delivers us, literally. The Master right? It's a master of the passions is reasoning. Yes, the Messiah is the, capital T, the reasoning, the wisdom. This is who our Messiah is. Verse 12, and indeed all those wishing to live reverently in Messiah Yasha shall be persecuted. But evil men and impostors shall go on to the worst, leading astray and being led astray. But you stay in what you have learned and trusted, having known from whom you have learned, that from a babe you have known the set apart scriptures, which are able to make you wise for deliverance through belief in the Messiah Yasha. All scripture is breathed out by the Father and profitable for teaching, for reproof, for setting straight, for instruction in righteousness, that the man of the Father might be fitted, equipped for every good work, fruit of the wisdom. So, I keep going on and on, because everything literally will make so much more sense and connect so much more powerfully when you read these scriptures after you truly understand Fourth Maccabees and use this study as a supplement to your understanding, and reflect on it as much as you can to really understand that this is your, and I'm saying this so humbly, this is like literally a gateway to living perfect in Him, because it connects with every single thing, your fasting, like, etc. So no wonder the Most High is giving us this instruction, this understanding, before we literally get into the weapons of warfare. I had no plan on reading this book. None, like 99% of these studies, I had no plan on it. So imagine now, if we really lock this in, getting into the spiritual weapons of warfare, how much more powerful we will actually be using them in the spirit. That was the goal from the jump. That's the reason for this series. So even through my sufferings, I'm just kidding, but even through whatever, like, enemy doesn't want this. He doesn't want us understanding this, but only the Abrahamic youth, only the ones who are really about that life will really like grasp all of this stuff and truly live after it. So that's why I'd be so super excited to really share, because it's like I'm literally learning at the same time. Like, I love it. But for my brothers and sisters, be encouraged in this. This is like absolutely game changer. So please reflect on it. I appreciate y'all, all the holdups that I had today. I will save this one, of course, to make sure that you can access it. I'll upload both studies on YouTube. I might be able to put them together. Yeah, I might actually be able to put them together. That probably would be a little bit wiser to do that. So that way it's all in one. Or actually, no, I'll break them up into two. So that way you'll need to stop at a certain point. That way it's not like 7 hours. But yeah, I hope this was a blessing for y'all. It's been definitely a blessing for me. Let's be doers, not hearers of this word. True doers. And literally start catching yourself when you're reasoning, and really reflect on Fourth Maccabees. And those youth, those seven brothers, and the mother. Once you read more about the mom, like it's Eliezer. Can't forget about Eliezer. He was the first one that was brought up, and the things that they said, that like the power in their sentences and things of that nature, like it's so much. And really reflect. Put yourself in the tortures that you're reading. Put yourself there. Really reflect on where you are. reflect on it. Heavy. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and pray out. Appreciate y'all again. Dear Abba, we thank you so much for your word. Messiah Yasha, we thank you for you and for what you've shown us and what you've literally been counseling us in your wisdom and your instruction. We ask that you just continue to pull us towards you. Give us all the wisdom that we can, that you're blessing us with, and your timeliness of it, and each individual's timeliness, and each individual's walk, and as a whole, your people, that you continue to cover us and allow us to move towards you and gain all these different things that you are blessing us to gain. I ask that you just continue to forgive us for our shortcomings and help us not fall eventually short to the things that we fall short in, into sin. Allow us to allow us to really develop and inherit wisdom in her wholeness, in your wholeness, Messiah, that we may also establish reason and be masters of reason and reasoning, so we can be masters over our passions, over the lusts of the pleasures of life, over the things that we endure on a daily, over our flesh, that we may win this war in that way. When we're soul tied to these demons that try to come against us, we understand why you say that no weapon formed against us shall prosper in the name of Yahshua Messiah. This is the reason why you say this, because only through you, which encompasses all things in wisdom and reason and more, that we can fight against these demons, these demons that we're soul tied to. Allow us to understand more in Scripture why you are our rock and a shield, a fortress against these attacks. Allow us to truly meditate on these things and get to a heart where Psalm 119 speaks of you and speaks of you, Father, that we may truly have this in our heart and our walk in these ways, and that these weapons of warfare that we're going to gain and understand and truly walk and use, that power that you speak on in Mark 16 truly comes about in us. That your Spirit allows those who are truly going to walk and seek you in wisdom and seek you in all things will be able to gain that prophecy that you've written, that has already been happening to our brothers and sisters and before our time, whatever time frame it has been, but that we may, whom are here today listening, and others who are striving, may walk in those same ordained paths that you've given each and every one of us to be able to share in that spirit, in your set apart spirit, to be empowered in your set apart spirit. We ask that you continue to help us walk in your ordained path and in our ordained path, and we don't go to the left or the right, that we may choose life so we can walk straight. And that way, when we're walking straight, we meet you, Messiah, when our time comes, that you may lead us into the entrance of the kingdom. For we hope that we seek it with our whole heart, mind and soul and body, and that we'll give an entrance into it. So that way we look exactly like you, and exactly in the image that you destined for us to have, for your people. We ask for your forgiveness of all things, and we ask that we repent and truly turn away from those things in the Hebraic understanding of it, so we may truly walk after you. And we give you all the praise, glory, and honor in the name of your Son, Messiah Yahshua, we pray. Amen. Amen. What a blessing. I highly doubt I'm going to do a study next week, but if the Ruach says so, it will be so. Pray for your boy and his growing family, because it's nothing like growing when your family is growing. That's when it gets tough, but it's a good discipline. So let's stay locked in, y'all. I appreciate you. Let's catch up. So many notes. I'm gonna try. I'm trying. Look, that's what I plan to do already, but Messiah said, "Yeah, let me throw this at you." So it's timely. It's timely. Time is running out, right? It's timely. I would never. I mean, we're just blessed to gain this understanding while we're alive. It's nothing like imagining not getting understanding, which is a part of the spirit and wisdom, before our time is up. So then when people are in a place of condemnation, they're literally wondering, and they're hearing their sins about their sins because it's a witness unto them, and they can't even find wisdom nowhere. That's tough. So let's continue to do the work, y'all, and really move forward and truly walk as a new man. This is what a new man. This is what Paul. Shout out to Paul. This is how he became a new man. Everything in him changed. And he understood these things. So even when we read some of his letters, you could probably find some new things of understanding. Some more validity, because we understand more of what the Hebraic understanding of what we're understanding, Hebraic understanding of what we're gaining, and just make sure it translates all around the spectrum. So, yep. All right, y'all. I appreciate you. I'm going to go ahead and save this. And that's a wrap.